Probation in Omaha. I supervise our investigations unit, and then I'm also in charge of a special project in Douglas County. What that project is about is called the Nebraska Regional Services Delivery Project. We have been allocated funds by the Department of Health and Human Services to provide services to our juveniles so that we don't have to so instead of we have the funds to just have that juvenile be under our watch, so to speak, and provide those services to our juveniles, which is really nice. We get services started very quickly. We can use any of the providers that are registered with probation, which is very simple. You basically fill out an application, say, hey, I agree to your terms. So we have no contracts. We can work with so many different providers. So that's kind of what the project is in a nutshell. We work on a fee-for-voucher service. So I oversee that, and like I said, I run the investigations unit. In the investigations unit, it's our responsibility to conduct predisposition investigations. We use a variety of assessments that I'm going to talk about. Our starting point, though, when we start the entire PDI process, is we use the Nebraska Youth Screen. It's kind of our first step in making our determination as to risk. Now, spell check is fabulous, but sometimes it doesn't catch the words that aren't supposed to be there, so it should say why it is used, the Nebraska Youth Screen. Does everybody have a copy of the actual tool in your packet? And if so, can you flip to that? Do they have a copy? You know? Okay, good. Perfect. Just have that open so you can look at it as we go through the different sections. Has anybody ever seen our Nebraska Youth Screen? Okay, perfect. It's not just our screening instrument. You know, if you leave today and you're like, wow, that was a really good screening tool, feel free to use it. You know, you have the information right there at your discretion. So, all right. The NYS and its purpose. Some of this I'm going to speak to you as from an officer's perspective. Apologize for that. That's just how I know how to speak. So the purpose as to why we use it is to guide our officers as to which investigation we're going to do. Like in our world, we have two different types of investigations. We do a shorter version. It's called our predisposition report. Doesn't include quite as much information. We typically will utilize this type of report for offenders who are probably really low risk. We determine that based off this youth screen. We also do a predisposition investigation based on the YLS, and I'll get into that pretty in depth in a moment. Evidence-based practice has shown that the more you focus on low risk, the more harm you can do. So each offender, or each individual has a different risk level. Some people are low risk, and we need to target our interventions to low risk. Some people are high risk, so we need to target interventions to a higher risk population. Now, y'all are familiar with EBP, because I heard you learned it last time, and she just threw up the principles, so you guys know what evidence-based practice is all about. All right, the procedure. The PDI or the YLS is completed in probation no matter what when these principles or these components exist. We always do a PDI YLS interview if we are dealing with felony, an offense involving personal injury, some sex offense charge. If they score a 10 or higher on our detention screener instrument, or if they score a 7 or above on the YLS. That's the tool that I'm talking about here. So, if we're going through the process and we're using our little screening tool, if they score a 7 or above, then we automatically know we need to do a more intensive investigation, and that's when we kind of switch gears and go towards the YLS. Now, if they score below a 7, then we can go do our predisposition report, which is based off the Nebraska Youth Screen. And I kind of skipped ahead. All right. So, go ahead and make sure that tool is right in front of you. Okay, the first section of the tool is basic demographic information. We typically have it all filled out when our client, we call them clients, come into the probation office. So we have, more time to focus on the screening tool. So you fill out the demographic information, which includes the name, the date of birth, age, gender, race, and the case number. Now, based on age of first arrest, you accumulate so many points. So as you can see, anywhere between 8 and 13, you get 3 points. 14, 2 points. 15, 1 point. And anybody whose age of first arrest is 16 or above warrants 0 points. You kind of have an idea of where you're going. If the first box, you have 3 points. You probably have a good idea that, ooh, this might be a high-risk offender. And yeah, we have kids that young that come through probation. I think our youngest kid we had on probation was 11, which seems crazy. All right, so not only are we going to look at age, we're also looking at prior arrest history or citations. If they have 3 or more arrest citations, again, you're giving them that 3 points. 2 arrest citations is 2, 1 is 1, and 0 is 0. So now let's say you have a youth that's before you that committed his first offense at 13, and since 13 he's racked up 3 charges. Okay, well, you're already sitting at 6. You know that this is absolutely going to be a high-risk offender. So you already understand what type of client you're working with. The first component of the screening tool is this family circumstances and parenting. Questions that are asked on the tool, we check on the box. So you have yes, somewhat, no. Broken down, it's most apply, some apply, few apply in regards to this domain. There are certain questions, though, that we tend to focus on when we are going through this domain. First, we kind of talk about the relationship with their parent or their caretaker. And this is supposed to be done fairly quickly. It's a screening tool, so it's not an assessment. It's not that in-depth. So you're asking these quick questions and scoring out your tool. So describe your relationship with your parents or your caretaker. Do you have daily contact with your parent caregiver? Do you argue with them? What is the discipline like? Do your parents caretaker work? And then you can also ask the parents, because they should both be sitting in front of you. Ask the parent, hey, what is your relationship like with your son? How often do you talk to them? What kinds of activities do you do together? It's not, okay, do you have a conflictual relationship, are you left unsupervised? You're not reading this verbatim, you're asking those questions, you're using a little bit of your MI skills, your motivational interviewing skills, try to get that information from them. Does anybody notice anything about these particular questions? There's 2 kinds of questions you can ask people. Right, they're open-ended questions. That's a really big component to motivational interviewing. You don't want to ask closed questions because you're going to get yes/no answers. You're not going to get that extra information that you really want. So ask those open-ended questions. So you move to the education employment section. Now on the screening tool, where the points are concerned, it's either most apply, some apply, none apply. And you have to read through these definitions. So when it's talking about most apply, that's when you're saying like the youth is not employed or seeking employment, demonstrates disruptive behavior, truancy problems with peers and teachers, low school achievement. When you're looking over the tool and you say, yeah, there's all of those components there, then most apply. Now if you look at the none apply, youth is not employed or seeking employment, this demonstrates disruptive school behavior, truancy problems. If none of those exist, then obviously you would score them out with a 0 in that particular domain. So you're going through the boxes, you're specifically reading the definitions of what it means to most apply, some apply, few apply. They do change up a little bit in the tool, so you have to read those boxes very carefully. Some of the questions you would focus on, tell me about your school. How's your attendance been lately? What do you enjoy about school? Do you have any behavior problems in school? If I collected your school information, what would I see? What are your grades? What are some positive negatives about school? Do you have friends at school? Do you like activities in school? How do you get along with your teachers and your classmates? Do you have a job? Some kids, they're to that age where maybe they are dropped out of school, they're working on a GED, but they're employed full-time. So those are information or questions that you need to ask. It's information that you need to gather. Again, ask those open-ended questions. A lot of behavior problems can start at school, and there's sometimes reasons for them. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad kid. Maybe he's being bullied. Maybe he's struggling in school because his teachers are giving him a hard time. These are components that you need to take into consideration as well. It's not just a black and white, good kid, bad kid. There are other components involved, so you need to flush that out. Peer relationships. This one's a little bit different. You can look and see all of the youth's acquaintances, friends, and role models are delinquents. None are positive, so it's an absolute. They have no positive friends in their life. Okay, 2. Somewhat, youth's acquaintances, friends, and role models are a mix of delinquents and positive pro-social people, and then few of the youth's acquaintances, friends, and role models are delinquents. Most are positive pro-social. So the domain is a little bit different. So either they have no positive friends, and they have some, or they have all. Some of the questions you can ask for this domain. Do you have a lot of friends? What kinds of things do you like to do together? Are they positive friends, not in any trouble? Are any of your friends on probation? Well, what are they on probation for? How many of your friends use drugs or alcohol? How do your parents feel about your choice of friends? Do your parents know your friends? Kids in this particular age group, what is their primary focus? Their peers, right? Their whole world revolves around their peers. You can get a lot of information or a lot of clues as to what's going on by asking questions about their friends. Sometimes they don't want to talk about their friends, and I have to let them know, well, I don't want to know their names. I just want to know what type of people you're spending your time with. And once they know that, okay, I'm not going to be, giving up Johnny, then they're more apt to open up and talk to you about, the kinds of things that they do. And sometimes they're brutally honest. Yeah, we like to smoke weed together. Some of them just don't care. They're going to tell you straight up. So it just kind of depends. All right. The next domain is substance use. Now on the screening tool, you're back to the more than 2 apply, 1 or 2 apply, and none apply. So occasional drug use, chronic alcohol use, life functioning affected by use, use-related offenses. All of those you can look to see if more than 2 apply, 1 or 2 apply in the next box, which is the occasional drug use, chronic use, and so on, or none apply. Some of the questions that you can focus on in regards to obtaining this information are, tell me about the drugs and alcohol you have used. When was the first time you used? How old were you? How often do you use? Have substances impacted your life? Is the substance use connected to the current charge? Is it causing a strain on the family? How is your relationship with your parents? What do you use? When was the first time that you ever tried any drugs or alcohol? Asking a lot of questions about substance use is very important, because again, it's usually one of those higher risk domains that we deal with juveniles. Now, there is some objectivity that you need to kind of apply. It's normal for kids to experiment a little bit. we're going to go over the YLS components, but one of the pieces on the YLS that we're taught when you go through a training is that normal experimentation is to be considered. Like, are you going to a party on the weekend? Maybe you're smoking cigarettes with your buddies, you're having a beer. That's normal. We're talking about abnormal substance use. I'm not condoning it, I'm just saying it really happens. All right, leisure recreation. 2 or more apply, 1 applies, none apply. So youth spends time unconstructively, has no positive activity interests, has no organized activities. So those are the domains in this section. Questions you can ask. What activities are you involved in? What are your interests? Just because they're not involved in a pro-social activity through the school doesn't mean that they don't have some sort of interest. Maybe they're engaged in a youth group at church. That's a great activity that they're involved in. Maybe they're really interested in collecting comic books, I don't know, or they're in a stamp club. Okay, they are involved in something, or they have an interest in something. How do you spend your free time? Are they waking up, going to school, coming home, and playing video games until they go to bed? Well, is that good use of your time? Some people will say, hey, well, they're not out getting in trouble, so that's all right. Well, as a teenager, you need to develop a little bit. You need to be involved in pro-social activities, or you need to identify pro-social activities. Video games aren't deviant, but still, they're not engaged with people. How do you feel about your child, or how your child spends his or her free time? Ask the parents. Okay, well, do you see Johnny during the day, or when he comes home, does he lock himself up in the bedroom and you don't hear from him? What kinds of activities do you do together as a family? So getting that information as to how they spend their time is very important. You know what they say, idle hands, the devil's playground. You got a kid sitting around doing nothing. That's not a very good thing. Start thinking of things to do. Personality behavior. Most apply, some apply, none apply. Inflated self-worth, physical or verbal aggression, tantrum, short attention span, impulsivity, little remorse for their actions. That's where you kind of start into learning more about them, their personality. So tell me about yourself. How would others describe you? How would you describe yourself to me? What do you like when you get angry? How long do you stay angry? What kinds of behaviors do you exhibit when you're angry? Do you throw things? Do you yell? Do you scream? Do you say, you're going to hurt somebody? Tell me how you feel about getting in trouble with the law. You can kind of gauge their remorse by doing this. Wow, I feel really bad. I really hurt my parents. Now I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to go to college, or, I don't care. What are they going to do to me? They can't do anything to me. I'm just a juvenile. They have very, strong attitudes sometimes about their offense. Talk to the parent. Describe your child's personality to me. Are they verbally or physically aggressive? Well, what does it look like when they're angry? You can get a lot of information from these parents as to their child's personality, even if the child doesn't want to tell you how they are. Oh, tell me about yourself. Oh, I'm great. Everybody likes me. You talk to the parent, you might get a different story. Attitudes and orientation. Most apply, some apply, most apply. That should be on the bottom, none apply. Most apply. Antisocial attitudes, rejects, won't seek help, defies authority, is very callous. Now there's a difference when you're asking somebody, do you think you have a problem? No. Well, if the court says you need to participate in a program, would you? Well, yes. Then that's better than no, I don't have a problem, no, I'm not going to participate. So some of the questions you can ask. Do you ever seek help for your problems? Who do you talk to? Have you seen a counselor in the past? Do you talk to your friends? Do you have a good relationship with your mom to where you could go talk to your mom? What is your attitude towards authority? I hate you, I don't want to be here, or my teachers are stupid. How do you feel about being placed on probation? A lot of them don't want to be placed on probation, but it's a better alternative to going to detention or to a group home. Are you willing to participate in treatment if ordered? And again, it's usually, well, yes, because they know that if the judge orders it, the only way they're going to get off probation is if they complete it. They may not want to, but they're going to do it. In this particular domain, you're kind of trying to flush out these antisocial personality traits. We're not diagnosing them antisocial, but you're kind of gauging their callousness. You know, do they have a lack of concern for what they've done? Are they acknowledging that there's some sort of problem? Are they willing to participate? You know, if you have no, 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 you're dealing with probably a very high-risk individual. Now the scoring. This is pretty hard, I'm telling you. All you do is you add up the numbers on the side, and you get a score. So your risk level classification. Low risk is 1 through 6. Medium risk would be 7 to 11, and your high risk would fall anywhere between 12 and 20. I don't know how you get 20 on here, but so that's how you come up with your overall risk assessment. The risk is the who. So it's telling you, okay, Johnny, he scored a 7, so he's medium risk. You know what you're working with here. So in the probation world, somebody hits a 7, then we're switching gears. What are we going to do at that point? Does anybody remember? If I have somebody who scores a 7 on this Nebraska youth screen, I'm going to do a while less interview because I'm going to need to get a lot more information about Johnny. Does anybody have any questions? I feel like I flew through that. I'm a fast talker. It's really a good tool. You're supposed to do the interview with the parent and the child in front of you together. Yes. Yes. Well, you're supposed to. Now, some people in our office do it separately because what's the drawback if you do it together?
Kid's gonna lie.
Kid's gonna lie. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes the parents lie. We've had kids who come in and the parents are like, oh, everything's great. Kid comes in, and I have one case in particular where the girl was like, so my mom probably told you everything was great at home, right? And, you know, like, yeah. She's like, it's not. My mom's, you know, horrible. She's drunk. She does this, she does that, but please don't tell her I told you. So if, you know, you feel like, okay, you kind of gauge the family. If you feel like, ooh, you know, there might be some things going on, because you get some facts ahead of time, right? Kind of know what's going on. You kind of gauge it. Some of our officers do, some of our officers don't. It just kind of depends. But it's a good starting point. It's very quick. It's not an in-depth interview. You're throwing some questions out. You're gathering enough information to screen out the tool, and then you're able to identify the risk of, you know, who you're working with.